Welcome to the Milo Yiannopoulos Show on Podcast One, broadcasting live from Mordor, the Borg Cube, and Voldemort's lair all at the same time. This show is hosted by Milo Yiannopoulos, the most fabulous supervillain on the internet. Sorry, no offense, but it's true. The Milo Yiannopoulos Show is brought to you by Breitbart.com.
Welcome back to the Milo Yiannopoulos Show. This week I have a very exciting guest. I'm always very excited by guests who cause controversy and drama. And my next guest is Martin Shkreli. Thank you for joining us, Martin.
Thank you.
Now, you cause almost as much drama on the internet as, I don't know, Donald Trump or something. You have been called the most hated man in America, which is a very impressive nickname to acquire.
Thank you.
So you are, for those, I mean, the person living under rocks in Zimbabwe who don't know who Martin Shkreli is. He's an American entrepreneur and pharmaceutical executive, co-founder of the hedge fund MSMB Capital Management, co-founder and former CEO of the biotechnology firm Retrofin, and founder and former CEO of Turing Pharmaceuticals. In September 2015, Martin received widespread criticism when his company obtained a manufacturing license for the antiparasitic drug Daraprim and raised its price by over 5,000%, leading to him being referred to as the most hated man in America. And then, in further drama and controversy, which we'll talk about, there's also an impending securities case that we'll talk about too. Now, let's deal with the AIDS thing first. Now, it's not quite accurate to talk about I didn't really understand the drama here. Now, am I right in saying, you raise the price of the drug and that price is paid by insurance companies, not patients, but because it sort of sounded bad, were you a sort of victim of politicized progressive coverage? Or did you do it to annoy people? Like, what really happened here?
I think it was probably a mix of all of the above. I did this exact same. Okay. I did this.
You knew when you were doing it, didn't you? You knew.
Well, it's kind of a perfect storm. There's definitely a little bit of obstinate kind of behavior that I've showed my whole career, and I think some people like that. I'm pretty confident in the things that I do. And I had done this same price increase thing twice before, and probably about a dozen times before, just as an investor, prodding all my companies I invested in to raise prices as high as they could. And then for my own drug companies, I had done it twice before, and nobody really cared about the two before. So it was a little bit of a surprise. And then I think the only thing that differentiates this one was that it was during an election year. In fact, the other drugs actually you could argue that those price increases were far more egregious than this one. And if you think they're egregious at all, which I don't. So, it was a mix of things. I definitely think, one of the funny things that sort of has come out of all this is that I didn't realize how many enemies I had in the media. And I don't mean like by, when I say that, I don't mean like this clandestine kind of progressive liberal media or anything like that. I mean actual people that don't like me from things that I did before, either, to someone specifically or somebody who knows somebody. And, word of mouth kind of travels fast and people say, oh, yeah, I know that guy, he screwed somebody out of this. Or, I heard he yells at his coworkers. And, all of a sudden these nasty articles sort of show up.
One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is I kind of felt a slight kindred spirit thing with you because you have what I've noticed about myself in the last couple of years as I've kind of started to get a little notoriety. And it's the mythology that grows up around you. People start to invent these weird, fantastical rumors that just sort of gain traction on their own, whether or not they have any relation to reality whatsoever. So I ran a very small technology publishing, like a publishing company in Britain, and we ran into sort of temporary trouble. And suddenly there's sort of massed ranks of left-wing British journalists who had silently been hating me from the
right,
side.
exactly.
And it's this sort of like, you're a shitlord and you're a provocateur and you enjoy the spectacle enormously. But my experience is you kind of acquire this silent army of haters among, the dour, the mediocre, the physically unattractive, all of the people who sort of look on in envy and
yeah, in my case, the unsuccessful, mostly. I mean,
right. For me, it's ugly people. For you, it must be poor people.
Well, look, I'm 33 and there's countless people that haven't accomplished, anything in the pharma industry. And, all of a sudden they hate me because I'm 33 and I've made a lot of money. I've started two very big drug companies and, biotech and pharma is littered with failure because it's a risky industry. And I find ways to make sure my investors don't have to bear that risk. And so you're right. I do think there are literally hundreds of people and some of these very important people CEOs of major drug companies like Pfizer or Merck that have been secretly hating me or were jealous of me. And now is the perfect time to get revenge. And, it is ridiculous.
Well, what I like about you is you sort of have that Trumpian "don't back down, double down" thing about you, and you don't mind sort of facing down critics with a sort of sense of humor. And Trump does it because he has the money enough to be rude, and you have the intelligence track record of money enough to be rude. I've sort of tried to make myself social justice proof by just rubbing the silly progressive identity politics in their face by gaying wrong, as they would put it. It's enormously fun these days, even to just have regular conversations that we all have in our private lives, but do it in public, because everybody's speech is so closely regulated these days that when somebody with your level of success, and I think this is what you have in common with Trump, which is why you've become a cult figure, when somebody with that level of success speaks plainly in public, we're so unused to hearing it that it sort of rubs people up the wrong way. And some people love it, and you have a huge army of fans on Twitter, I've noticed. Other people just sort of resent your freedom to speak as you would like to, because they don't have it, and they resent success, they resent the attention, they resent all sorts of things. And I think you've got a very unfair ride from the media for all sorts of reasons. But I saw this amazing thing that you did in Congress, where it's sort of amazing pleading the fifth over and over again. And I think the only question you answered was the pronunciation of your name or something. What was that experience like to you? Because they dragged you in to ask you about this pricing thing, right?
Yeah. They compelled me through subpoena power and things like that. And, I think they really abused, if you really dive into the law and things like that, they sort of abused their privilege quite a bit. And what frustrated me the most is that if you actually watch these hearings, they're really pathetic. The congressman or woman gets sort of 5 minutes to basically talk to themselves. And if you try to answer the question, they just interrupt you, and because all they did, all they have is 5 minutes to talk. So they don't want to hear from you, which is remarkable.
They're sort of talking to their own constituents and to the media on their own behalf, really.
With you, there is a conversation piece, which is, if you guys actually want to fix this law or fix this situation and come up with a law, you probably want to do the listening. God gave you, one mouth and 2 ears, but it's actually the most counterproductive attempt at productivity that for a government that's pretty good at that, it's a really remarkable, or at least what the House did. I think the Senate might be a little more productive, but it's still sort of nuts. And I actually would have been really willing to talk to them if they weren't just so holier than thou and stuck up. My company makes drugs for dying kids, and I've invented a lot of these drugs. I've saved lives, and I'm not sure any of the people up there know that or care about it or, want to discuss kind of where this money's going or any of those things, because it doesn't fit their narrative. And one of the things I've learned trying to buy elections, support politicians, is this notion that media, they take all the money goes to media buys. And this is basically a free media buy. Anytime you talk to a politician, it's only about one thing. It's about, if you're in my seat at least, it's about money. It's about how many ads can you help me buy this week, whether it be through traditional fundraising, getting your friends to give the money, or God forbid, a PAC or super PAC. That's all that's on their mind. So sitting there in Congress, I think they basically looked at it and said, well, these guys are really happy because this is free publicity that they don't need to pay for. I guess that's a cynical view, but I really do think that's the way they look at it.
Yeah, we're here with Martin Shkreli, internet sensation and part-time professional provocateur, but more importantly, entrepreneur and pharmaceutical executive, talking about his experiences in front of Congress. I want to just ask you quickly, before we move on to politics and various other questions, I just want to ask you, has this experience with the sort of the media pillorying you and Congress not really being interested in what you have to say soured your enthusiasm for working in biotech? Your company makes some very important drugs. You are, by any metric, one of the most important people in this industry. Has it soured your enthusiasm for biotech? Are you going to take a change of direction after all of this settles down?
I'm not sure. I think it's too early to tell. I definitely want to stay in the industry creating great new drugs. We've never had a time in medicine before where we have so much information and really, I hate to say this, some people might even roll their eyes when I say this, but a lot of diseases that are actually quite easy now to cure, that we could probably take apart some of these illnesses in the next 10 or 20 years to a point where we've never seen before. And that's thanks to this, information technology and all these things happening at once. So to me, I want to be a part of that because I'm one of the people that's good at it and I can do it. How I'm going to do that is going to be a good question. I mean, I personally, somewhat like you, I mean, nothing really sticks to me emotionally, but just functionally, I have to make sure Wall Street will accept me with open arms and, do things like that, which may not be easy. So the way I'm going to be doing things may be more clandestine or depending on
you're going to go dark. You're going to be like a dark operative, and anywhere there is controversy or shitloading or like interesting stuff going on, then there's somehow your fingerprints will be found at the crime scene.
Exactly. There's one guy named Sam Waxel who participated in, I guess, this insider trading scheme with Martha Stewart and went to jail for I think 8 years. And he came out and the first thing he did was up and start a new drug company. And they actually did just fine. So,
All right, well, let's talk about this. Explain briefly what you were arrested for, and then tell us if you did it.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's what we want to know. I mean, what do they say you did, and did you do it?
Yeah, so I'll go through A, and I'll tell you now that the answer to B is no. It's conclusively no. It's dramatically no. It's like
almost disappointingly no. Your villain creds are evaporating.
I know it's terrible, but I couldn't admit to this alleged crime if I tried because the logic just doesn't make any sense. So the allegations sort of drop into two big buckets. The first is I managed a series of small hedge funds. And the allegations are, in essence, that I made misrepresentations and did all kinds of sort of nasty things with my hedge funds. The second bucket is kind of the more unusual one. So bucket A is all over a very small amount of money, and I'll kind of get to that in a second. The way our government works, which is you might find really unusual, and I pray you or anyone you know never has to go through this, but basically sentencing is directly commensurate with money lost. It's really this fascinating thing in fraud cases. Right. The dollar amount is like linearly, equated to a month sentence. Yeah. So the bulk of the indictment relates to these consulting agreements that this is the first case, as far as I can tell, in the history of corporate America that someone's been accused of doing this. So it's a really...
So somebody really wanted you. They wanted you got, didn't they?
Yeah, it seems like it.
And after the Daraprim price raise and all of the other sort of provocations you put out there, your silent army of haters in big pharma and the media, they've got together and somebody really wants you, don't they?
My lawyers think that the timing is just too coincidental. That, something that happened 5 years ago was just all of a sudden 2 months later, the most exciting thing to these prosecutors. I actually have a different sort of viewpoint on it. So there's certainly some cynicism even from within my own camp about the timing of it. I actually think that all it really is if prosecuting someone who's well known is much, much better for you as a litigator or a government or an office or a prosecutor, whatever it is, than someone who isn't. Because people...
And what could be better than prosecuting the most hated man in America?
Exactly. So the second charge is this sort of bizarre, almost downright strange sort of concept that I entered into these consulting agreements. I hired these consultants to not do consulting work, but instead to basically funnel them money kind of under the table, if that makes sense. I think that's a decent summation of the allegations. Okay. They're beyond preposterous. One of the things that's the most interesting defense is my hedge fund did remarkably well. And it sort of nullifies, I think, any of the claims that they have, because typically in these situations, somebody loses money and because there's some kind of fraud, right? In my case, my investors did so well that they invested with me again and again and again, even after the allegations kind of came to light. Yeah. Some of my investors actually implored the SEC to say, this is ridiculous. You can't punish this guy because you're telling me that I'm the victim, and I'm telling you that I'm not a victim.
You see, the authorities do this sometimes, because it's not it's like a civil case, but it's a criminal prosecution, so the victims don't have to be compliant for them to make the case. Even if they say like, no, really, no, stop it, don't put him in prison. I want him to make me another $500 million. Don't do this.
it's remarkable, and the whole case is sort of ridiculous, and I think I'll win. And there have been a few executives who have gone through this. Mark Cuban is one. Henry Nicholas is this extremely rich semiconductor executive who was dragged through this crazy arrest in 2008, and it was dismissed shortly thereafter. But so we'll see what happens. The good news is that really, no matter what the outcome is, I don't think I'm facing a very long sentence in the worst case scenario that somehow by some miracle the government wins. Despite that, you may know that the government seems to win 90% of the time in plea deals and 75% of the time or something in court, which I think is also somewhat mysterious.
Yes, or maybe they just have an amazing hit rate of picking the right people to put into court. I mean, who knows? Who can say? But see, this is the cost. Look, you enjoy playing the villain, I think. I don't think you'll mind me saying that. You seem to enjoy playing the villain in the media. And the problem is, this is one of the consequences in a society where, if you took the ruling classes as slightly conspiratorial, but where the government, the media, the entertainment industry are all locked up in the business of virtue signaling. And you become somebody who doesn't much care for advertising your moral virtue to others. You'd rather talk about how fun you are, how successful you are, how wealthy you are, how good looking you are. Sorry, I'm projecting, but sure. It becomes a risk because people end up trying to come for you. Let me ask you, as a European, I've grown up with this desire in the media, the desire in politics, the desire in the entertainment industry, desire in academia to tear down successful people and to enjoy watching them fall. But it seems to me, this virtue signaling instinct seems to me a relatively new development in America, a country that's traditionally been better about allowing people to celebrate their success in public.
Sure, yeah.
And if you look at the divided response to Donald Trump, which sure, he's divisive and he's a shitlord like we are, but the level of envy-driven hatred, the irrational hatred of this man, I don't think was there in the 80s.
Oh no! I mean, I grew up in New York City in the 80s and 90s, and this guy was loved. I mean,
people quite liked success 20 years ago, right?
They did.
America used to quite like success. What went wrong? I mean, you could say it's sort of envy-driven middle-class diseases of progressive politics and grievance culture and identity-based victimhood and all this sort of stuff. And there's an extent to which that's true. But where do you think all this went wrong? Why do people hate successful people in America all of a sudden? Because this seems to me profoundly antithetical to the whole spirit of the country.
It's really bizarre, and I can point you to no other case, and you're much better of a sociologist, it sounds like, than I am, but the one case in Vignette that I can point to that you might find interesting is Bill Gates. Gates was my hero in the 90s, and I looked up to him, and he was the most a lot of people hated him. So, in the 90s, there's people saw him as a monopolist. Microsoft was thought of as an evil empire in the computing world, if you're like a hacker or computer guy in the 90s. I mean, you drew Bill Gates' face with horns on it, and you were rooting. Yeah, you were rooting for Linux. You were rooting for Apple. You were rooting for anything.
I always liked the Borg. I thought the Borg was. I thought the Borg were the good guys.
Me too. I was a huge Microsoft fan in the 90s.
Ruthless, successful. The emotionless, ruthless pursuit of perfection. What's not to love?
Well, you see this guy literally, almost literally crush a company with his bare hands. And you sit there and say, are you the kind of person that feels bad for the 20 losers that just got crushed? Or are you the kind of person that feels good because this guy, Steve Ballmer and Bill Gates, and these guys are so smart and they're so cunning that they crushed this company fairly or unfairly? And if it was unfairly, they've got the lawyers to bail them out. And if it was fairly, so be it. I think
Ballmer's such a boss. I love that man. I don't have a sexual crush on him, but I definitely have a man crush on Steve Ballmer. Just the extent to his obvious brilliance and passion and bloody mindedness. I mean, the guy's obviously, insane sociopath, but all my friends are insane sociopaths. I am an insane sociopath. Everybody I like is an insane sociopath. This guy I have such a bro boner for him. I don't know how to explain it.
He is sort of like the king of the jungle personified, in a suit, which is pretty neat. But at the same time, people hated Gates in the 90s. Now they love him. Yeah. So, for whatever reason, he's given away all this money. But what the fuck did you think he was going to do with it?
There's only so many houses and boats and planes you can buy. I mean, he's got this amazing house where you can change the degree to within 0.001 there's this degree of specificity beyond which you don't need to go. What was he going to do? Quite.
I mean, with $70 billion, people are thrilled when he gives it away. They hate him when he's making it. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to me because anyone who knows anything about that amount of wealth knows that, after $100 million, the difference between you and a billionaire is very limited. After $1 billion, the difference between you and Bill Gates is close to nothing. Yeah. And it was clearly meant to be given away. And there are people like the Waltons and whomever that maybe they didn't give away all their money, but I think they're also in the process of doing it. And folks don't want to give you a second to sort of explain yourself. And that's why a lot of my friends say, oh, Martin, they'll know what you've been up to in the next 10 or 20 years. In 2040, when you've cured 7 diseases and you give away $10 billion, people will like you.
But this is the problem. I'm not sure they will. This is what's distressing to me about the way that American society has turned in the last 2 decades away from the celebration of success and the cult of entrepreneurship, of self-reliance, independence, freedom, whether it's open creativity, freedom of expression and of language, which we both enjoy, I think, pushing up against the authoritarian pearl clutchers and nannies, or whether it's this
the most bothersome thing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, as a journalist and a writer, freedom of expression is really key to everything.
Well, I've actually seen it. I've seen it both ways. So I'm a Republican. I lean to the right, but I had this friend.
Why they won't love you no matter what you do. You could cure every disease, but you ever voted for a Bush, you're dumb.
But I won't name names, but there's this very, very well known gay Republican that.
Is it Guy Jensen? Because he's the only one I can think of.
I was going to say there are like 3. So.
Yeah. I mean, you've basically told me already anyway, so you may as well just say.
No, I really.
Is it Rick Perry? Is it Rick Perry? He's the other. No, I'm not supposed to. I'm not supposed to say that. If the lawyers are listening, it was a joke.
I might get shot through my window if I say who. But he's a very powerful, rich gay man, and he is a Republican, and he hates President Obama. So I'm not the most right-leaning guy in the world. I actually kind of thought Obama didn't do such a horrible job. And anyway, the point is that I'm talking to the guy, and I say, look, you obviously hate this man with a passion. And he says, yeah. And I said, have you ever sat down with him and had dinner and just talked about, some of these issues? And he said, I don't even think I could sit through a dinner with him. And I'm sort of sitting here saying, isn't open-mindedness important? And it cuts the same way with Trump. I'm not sure I love the guy to death, but I'm willing to hear him out. And I guess I'm like the most open-minded person I feel in a sea of closed-minded, already formed opinions, justice on the spot, reactionary stuff at Twitter. Nobody sits there and says, well, maybe he's got a point. Let me dig in a little deeper.
I agree with you. I'm on a college tour at the moment. I call it the dangerous faggot tour, just to upset liberals. I'm saying such outrageous and offensive things as maybe colleges should be open places of learning where all the opinions are heard, and the response from feminists is to smear themselves with fake blood and say, this man preaches hatred. It's obviously happening in universities first. And I think it's possibly even worse than you suggest. It's not just preformed opinions. It is unexamined prejudices. And it's a sort of weird clutch of progressive prejudices that generations of young American students are graduating with, going into the media, going into politics, going into entertainment, and coming to the world, understanding the world through this prism of grievance and victimhood and envy, the politics of envy. And this, for me, is a European coming to America and seeing America as, the highest and most perfect expression of those great Western values, the liberal democratic values, freedom and prosperity and freedom of speech and freedom of movement and property rights and all this kind of stuff that made the West awesome. It's very distressing to see America take these retrograde steps into unexamined prejudices driven by an education system that's clearly not fit for purpose. We're going to go to break. When we get back, I want to ask you a little bit more about Trump, because I can hear that you're sort of ambivalent on the subject, and I want to bring you over to Daddy, because I know that there are hordes. The internet is ablaze with desire for you to declare for Trump, because it would just be the perfect marriage of monstrous shitlords. So let's talk about it. Let's see if I can persuade you.
Sure.
And I want to ask you a couple of other things as well. about who you admire in public life and what's next for you. So we're just going to go to break, and we will be back with Martin Shkreli after these messages. Berksun designs and creates innovative products that power smartphones and portable devices anytime, anywhere. All Berksun products are designed in California, where else, and created with a very hands-on approach. They spend months and often years working with the best suppliers before a product gets put on the website. Their goal is to create products you will love and that they are proud of. And here's some great news. Just 2 to 3 minutes in the sun gives you 1% charge on your phone. That's about half the speed of the wall that's half the speed of wall charging. That sounds great. They also feature waterproof solar panels, so you can charge your active tech like GoPros, mini speakers, and other small devices. Just in time for music festival season. You know how it goes. You're away from an outlet all day, enjoying good music, and suddenly your phone is dead and you're separated from your friends. Berksun makes it easy to charge up and find your way. And now Berksun's offering free shipping. Just go to berksun.com/podcast. Again, free shipping for listeners of the Milo Yiannopoulos Show. Go to berksun.com/podcast. Pay no attention to my disgusting snobbery about solar power. Welcome back to the Milo Yiannopoulos Show. I am here with a man the internet loves to hate even more than it loves to hate me. Martin Shkreli, thanks for joining us. I want to ask you a little bit about Donald Trump. This seems to be the subject of every conversation I have these days. So my first guest was Ann Coulter. We talked about Trump, and then last week it was Trump. Now, I have to ask you. So my analysis of this, which I've shared with listeners before, is that there are 2 main branches of Trump fandom. There's the white working classes who understand the economic and social pressures on them and want Trump to build the wall and fix trade. So these people who instinctively understand the threats to Western culture posed by mass immigration from other places, particularly Muslim immigration, but all sorts of other places. And they understand the wage pressures from uncontrolled, low-skilled immigration. They understand instinctively what the Republican Party seems to have forgotten about what happens to indigenous working class communities when, huge numbers of foreigners come in without much sort of economic justification, on humanitarian grounds, if you like, rather than out of economic necessity. But then there's a second group of Trump voters, and it's the Trump fans. I can't vote because I'm a Brit. Thankfully, I don't have to make that decision. But there's a second branch of Trump voters, the college-educated, smart, funny, mischievous, internet dissident, sort of alt-righty generation. And for them, you've become a bit of an icon because you don't mind who you annoy, and sometimes you seem to actively court provocation and controversy and attention-seeking in a way that's very rare in public life these days. And these people like Trump, they like me, they like you, I think they like Ann Coulter, they're like a variety of intellectual dissident characters who don't mind kind of running up against the grain. We spoke a little bit in the last segment about freedom of speech, but I wanted to ask you, we've talked a little bit about virtue signaling. We've talked a little bit about the press moving from, I think the press has gone from an engine of truth-telling into a sort of circle jerk of virtue signaling. Something's gone wrong, hasn't it, in American culture? Something's gone wrong with the punishing of success, with the dereliction of duty from the media. What are the conditions that have led to you being labelled the most hated man in America? Because it seems a very weird choice for people to pick. Why do you think that you have attracted so much ire? Because there's something sick, there's something rotten, there's something wrong in the system where someone like you can become this hate figure.
If I wanted to be really cynical, I could say that media has not been very successful. We've seen countless bankruptcies in newspapers, and even television now is sort of being disintermediated. I once had this fight with CNBC, which is unbelievably liberal. Really staggeringly, like for a business channel. I went on there and it felt like they were shaming me for raising the price of dairy prime. And I'm sitting there saying, all fucking day, 24 hours a day, all you talk about is profits. And my profits are inappropriate.
It's like the Financial Times. You probably recognize the paper.
Oh,
at least
sure.
It's on pink paper. They've been wrong on every major financial question ever. They were pro-Europe. The European single currency. They thought Britain should get into that. They've been wrong on everything. Literally every major financial question of, in the paper's history, they have fucked it up. And they sort of preach from on it. And yet you think, but this is supposed to be like the paper of record for Wall Street. Like, it's amazing. CNBC is like the American version of this, where you just think, how can these politics coexist with this, like, purpose of the purpose of this company?
Yeah, it's shocking to me. And if the media industry it's in trouble. And I think that change, that sort of seismic shift is going to be, I don't know if it means that the contents change or whatever. You're a better observer of this stuff than I am. I'm just a humble pharmaceutical executive, but
yeah, right. Yes, that's entirely congruent with your internet persona. Sure.
Yeah, I just sense that people look down their nose at certain capitalistic practices that there certainly are immoral capitalistic practices. I don't. What
for you classes as an immoral capitalistic practice? What where would you draw the line?
It's tough because anything I would conjure would be, someone would say, well, then make it illegal. For example,
like tobacco. Madoff is not okay, right?
Madoff's certainly not okay. I mean, that's criminal activity. Right. I think the tobacco industry, being a health guy myself, it's a really dangerous thing to falsely promote a product that is extremely dangerous. Now, obviously, they sort of explain that it's dangerous, but I think that if you had to sort of make a list of industries that are bad, I'd start with tobacco. I'd probably go next to
just
food.
So cool. They're so cool. I watch Thank You for Smoking. I'm like, I want to do that job. Just for badness, just to be just for the pure, unadulterated, nihilistic mischief of it all. I can't help myself.
I find it revolting, and then the food.
I'm staring at a pack of Newports right now, thinking, oh god.
The food industry, the media, these are bad, in my opinion. These are bad things. And if you look at pharmaceuticals, it's like the holiest of holy. I had dinner with a dying kid's mother the other night, and I know this woman for 5 years. And in the intervening 5 years, I'd made hundreds of millions of dollars. And I started off on a pledge to help save her kid's life. And her kid's 5 years older, and very little has been done to save her child's life because this scientific problem is extremely difficult. And if you think about pharma focused on extending lives, extending healthcare, and the best drugs or the most selling drugs are the ones that actually save lives. This isn't an industry to hate. If you're going to hate an industry, hate reality TV, hate tobacco.
No, Martin Shkreli, no. Reality TV is our last great hope.
hate food processors. Hate something that does.
You really are a health Nazi, aren't you? You're a health Nazi. Are you one of those? Are you one of those like raw juice people?
No. I think that's all bullshit. But, my sister was dying. She progressively went from this happy-go-lucky kind of 13-year-old girl to wheelchair-bound. Mm-hmm. And it turns out, I thought she had cancer. Most people thought she had cancer. Turns out she had an infection that went away with an IV antibiotic very easily and quickly, and her life was saved. And that, to me, it's a little bit of a miracle. And to be able to do that as a drug industry, I think it's really cool. But what's funny to me is that people don't realize that the stuff doesn't just grow on trees. That there actually is money that needs to be spent. And some of the sort of social justice warriors, or whatever you want to call them, on Twitter, they've said, well, just make the drugs without the profit. And you're sitting there scratching your head like
these people who have never been near a lab in college, they've done women's studies or African studies or gender studies. They've never so much as seen a microscope in real life, let alone, find out the humble microscope. Like, that's going to cost you $200. Like, you want to try and fix AIDS? Might cost some money. Dude. Like, there's this thing called research and development.
Yeah, my scientists are like the greatest people in the world. They're so nice. They're not greedy at all. They do it for the science. But one of my top scientists, he has 4 kids. How is he going to provide for his kids without profit? And Daraprim was, we basically took a drug that if you'd like to buy, I don't know, something that has a homogeneous price, like say a bottle of wine would be an example, a middle class bottle of wine, a decent bottle of wine, say it's $100.
Yeah.
And you bought a winemaker that was selling wine for 5 cents. And you said, hold on a second, this winemaker's driving itself out of business. I need to price it in line with the other wines that are being sold in this industry. And it doesn't matter that you didn't invent the wine, you didn't stamp on the grapes yourself. The the point is, you bought this company. They should be selling the wine for $100, and now they're going to sell for $100, and the company's going to be fine. That's what we did with Daraprim. People can't understand that because I don't know that if they need
there's
something
a sort of
willing.
There's a willing stupidity here, isn't it? And this is all leading up to me asking you about Trump, but I agree with you that the media is a bad industry, and I think when Trump says that that he wouldn't mind making it slightly harder for journalists to tell lies about people and make it easier to sue journalists, and everyone's like, oh God, First Amendment. Well, in cases of systemic industry-wide failure, that's when the government does step in, And I'm
there.
I'm a journalist, so I need to be able to say whatever I want about people in fair comment. But I see the media, and it has failed so catastrophically to report on all of the things I care about, whether it's gender politics or video games or anything. I mean, God only knows what they say about, what the lies they tell about, immigration and whatever else. But, the stuff that I care about, the cultural stuff, they lie all day, every day, to everyone, about everything. And they do so knowingly. And it's taken me a couple of years to really fully kind of take this on board, that the media is not just populated with stupid people who get things wrong all the time. It's populated with ideologues who purposefully lie. And there's this sort of deliberate obfuscation and misleading kind of approach to every time they report about the Daraprim thing, no patient pays that, right? No patient, pays that. It's passed on to insurance companies. It's diluted out across their whole subscriber base or whatever. Nobody with AIDS is suddenly going to be stuck with a bill that's like 5,500% more as a result of the price correction, if you like, that you made. It's an absurd and insane suggestion. But every journalist on the planet, right, left, and center, ran with this, didn't they?
We had this top liberal journalist come to our office, and he regaled me with this tale of, well, I'm going to tell the real story. I'm a top journalist. So he comes in, and he literally does a whole day of interviews with everyone in our office. Yeah. And he sort of decides not to write a long piece. Instead, he writes this sort of humor one-page piece that was so far from what he promised me that, it really disgusted me. It was just dishonest. And that's been my experience with 75, 80, 90% of the media. The really small outfits like the Vices and they're actually a little more fair. Vice is very liberal, but a little more fair to me, more fair to me than almost anyone.
Well, Vice is liberal, but I think fairly honest on the whole. You may not agree with their opinions. You may think they're crazy for throwing their hat in with the social justice rubbish. But in my dealings with them, they've been very reasonable. They even asked me to write for them once. I did a review of a previously unpublished Ayn Rand novel, and they were like, let's get a safe right winger. We can, it's okay. Well, it's like, because I'm a fag, so it's fine. They can say, well, you published a Republican, but it's okay because he's a fag, so it's okay. They had to cover themselves, get somebody who actually knows what they're talking about, but is kind of like defensible to a Vice audience.
There's something about TrueCar a lot of people don't know. And by a lot of people, I mean people like me who have money, who don't need to buy used cars. Using TrueCar can help you buy any car that is not new. In fact, there are over 500,000 pre-owned vehicles available from TrueCar certified dealers nationwide. Whether you're looking to buy new or used, you can get upfront pricing information that empowers discounts off the list price for used cars and generally gives you a better buying experience through TrueCar's certified dealer network. There are over 500,000 pre-owned vehicles available from TrueCar certified dealers nationwide. You'll see what other people paid for the car, and you'll also know what a fair price is, and you'll feel confident in your purchase. With TrueCar, you can connect with a local certified dealer of your choosing, so you can enjoy a quick, easy buying experience. And using the TrueCar website or the TrueCar app, you can easily find the new or used car you want. When you're ready to buy a new or used car, visit TrueCar.com or download the TrueCar app to enjoy a better car buying experience. Some features are not available in all states.
Hi everyone, this is Adam Baldwin of Firefly, Full Metal Jacket, The Last Ship, Mass Effect, and... oh hell guys, it's easier to make a list of cool stuff I'm not in. You're listening to The Milo Yiannopoulos Show on Podcast One.
So let's talk Trump. I mean,
yes,
I'd be willing to vote for him, and it's largely for reason number two. Again, I don't pretend that I know things that I don't know. I'm not a politics expert. I'm not an anthropologist. I'm not a sociologist. You're remarkably smarter than I thought you'd be.
I don't know how to take that. I'm not sure that's a compliment.
I knew a little to nothing about you.
I
have a generally cynical perspective and a high standard. So, in any event,
I'm going to take it in a nice way. Carry on.
I don't know much about politics, and I don't know what makes for. You talked about trade and things like that. I don't have opinions on these things. Most people, when New York Times profiled me, they use the word genius and brilliant, over and over again. But that shit, the stuff you're talking about is still over my head. I don't expect the average American to understand wage dynamics any better. If I can't understand, I've started $2 billion drug companies. How am I going to, if I don't understand, how are they going to understand it? Right. So basically the way I look at it, like most people, I look at it based on personality, and I look at Trump and I say that, there's a lot of reasons why I'm attracted to the guy and wanting to vote for him, but there's still some things that make me uneasy. He does have foot and mouthitis. As much as I think the liberal...
Yeah, but don't we need that? Don't we need somebody who just doesn't give a shit?
So did Biden, right?
Look, we don't mind when it's liberals. We only mind when it's Republicans. Don't we need this? I mean, look, Americans have had 30 years of being told what they can say, what they can think, what they can read, what games they can play, how they can speak in public, what facts it's okay to share. I mean, America now in the media, if you talk about, I do a lot of stuff in like gender politics, relationships between men and women, because what's more important ultimately than that? Otherwise you end up like Japan. And the media just actively lies all day, every day about this stuff. They just lie. And certain facts have become unpalatable in polite society. The Overton window has narrowed to exclude factual things like studies. You can't say certain studies because you won't get a column in a national newspaper. You won't get invited on TV except as the token reactionary comedy bigot or whatever, which is a role I've fulfilled very well in the UK for many years. But all you're doing is talking about like evidence-based conclusions. And no, you can't have it. This is the great failure. It's appalling. That you can't do this. Don't we need somebody who, fine, he's too far in the other direction, perhaps. He might not be 100% consistent on policies that nobody cares about anyway, because this is a cultural election. This is like the Buchanan thing. People are voting in this election culturally, I think. They just like the guy. They like the guy. They like he's strong. He obviously really cares about America. There can be no doubt that this guy does care about the country, does want to make it great, does, have Americans' best interests at heart. Don't you think that this is a sort of necessary correction from 30 years of nannying and bullying from the sort of, maybe in the 90s it was the religious right saying, video games can make you violent. Now it's feminists saying they can make you sexist, and, certain words are problematic and they need trigger warnings and safe space and all the rest of it. Don't you enjoy the spectacle of somebody in politics doing what you do in big pharma and finance, what I try to do in journalism, just sticking an enormous middle finger up at the other side and saying, you know what, go fuck yourselves. Is that not reason to vote for him alone? Because it's enough for me.
It's exciting. It's almost enough for me. I'd say that, one of the problems
you
is
see how desperately I'm trying to get you over this line. I want you to come over to the dark side. Come over to the dark side. What I want to see after we do this interview and it goes out and everybody's going to pile on you on social media and say, come on, come over to Daddy. I want to see your name pop up. It's the proudest moment of my life, and I went onto Wikipedia and I saw my name under the list of celebrity endorsements for Trump. I was like, yes, I've made it. I want your name there by the end of next week. This is my mission.
Well, it might take more than just this interview, but no, I think it's possible. I mean, my problems with Trump are numerous. I mean, the foot and mouthitis, again, that doesn't bother me maybe as much as I intimated. The greater problem is that it's what you're talking about with respect to kind of censorship and political correctness. It's so endemic that it's kind of hard for him to succeed. He's almost too, in chemistry, like dissolves like. Mm-hmm. And he is so oil and water that I don't know that the world could sort of survive or politics in America could survive. I'm not sure that that's such a bad thing. So for me, I'm kind of willing to vote for him and support him just to see
what happens.
Exactly, just to sort of enjoy the craziness that would ensue, and also to sort of point out that
you're a little engine of chaos, aren't you yourself?
Yeah, well, I think if we elected him, one of the coolest things that we'd realize is that government is actually brutally inefficient. It doesn't do anywhere near what we thought it did.
So he can't do that much damage.
I don't think he can do any damage. And then I think that once we realize that, every presidency from then on out will sort of recognize that if Trump didn't set this country on fire, we're pretty indestructible. And the last thing we need is a big, crazy government that sort of
Well,
governs over us.
This is what I always say. Why do people want these activist presidents? Why do people want presidents that are going to do things? Surely the best president ever, surely, was Coolidge, because he did absolutely nothing. Don't we want a president like that in Trump, with a bit of bluster and bombast, who's basically not going to do anything? He's going to build the wall, and he's going to fix trade. And once, those two are important things, and he'll manage to get those through. And after that, the rest of his presidency, he'll basically just be fun and not do anything. And that's great. That's exactly what you want in a president.
Well, maybe I'll take a turn and piss you off for a second, because I think that
it wouldn't be a Yiannopoulos Shkreli interview without some drama.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Might as well mix it up. I can't go an hour without insulting somebody. So
you see, we're like sisters in that way.
I just got a cat, so that's going to make my life a little easier. But in any event,
just throw the cat out the window. And so that's the headline I want to see. If you're the most hated man in America already, what are they going to do when you start abusing pets? Okay, tell me, what are you going to upset me with?
Well, that's so again, being a Republican, I think Obama did a good job because he was an absentee president. I don't think he did much. I think ACA is Medicare plus. It's Medicaid plus. No big deal. It hasn't hurt the drug industry.
Obamacare, you're relatively okay with.
Dude, it is like the biggest non-event in the history of non-events, and I'm in the drug business. This is my bread and butter. All that's happened is a few more poor people can get their medicine, which fine, I'll take it. It doesn't change my life.
If the most evil, rapacious capitalist in America today is saying he doesn't mind poor people getting a few more medicine, maybe we should all chill out about Obamacare. How about that?
Yeah, it really is not. It's got slight benefits for America, for the people themselves, and virtually no drawbacks for business or anything like that. So I think it's fine. And then other than that, the guy's done jack shit. He sat there and babysat a natural rebound from '08. Then none of the bailout shit, none of that was him. Let's disabuse anyone of that notion that he saved our country or anything like that.
I don't think anybody listening to this show will be laboring under that misapprehension.
Yeah, but so he just sat there and sat through a deadlock and babysat our great country for 8 years. And if Trump does that,
maybe he was the Democrat Coolidge. I've never thought about this.
I really don't, because anytime I talk about him to my Republican friends, they just have this visceral. They look like they want to throw up. And I sort of sit there and say, did taxes go up a lot? Not really. I mean, they really didn't. They did go up a modest amount, but nowhere near.
Do you know what it is? I'll tell you. I think I know why they dislike him so much, and I think it's because. And I've picked up on this even as a foreigner, so I can only imagine how red in tooth and claw Republicans feel about this. But it's very clear to me that Obama doesn't like America very much. And there are things about America, particularly real America, if you like, the flyover states, that he just doesn't like. And he's definitely snobbish about where he's not outright contemptuous. And I think that rubs a lot of people up the wrong way. And I think they're right to be annoyed by that. He is, for want of a better expression, an elitist snob. And I think also...
Took the words out of my mouth. It is true.
Yeah, I mean, and you know what? That's reason enough to dislike somebody, to be honest. And I don't like him for that reason. I think also the hopey changey stuff, which people like to mock, for those conservatives, and many conservatives really do care about, for instance, the African American community, because they don't know why these people keep voting against their own interests and putting Democrats into local government and voting for Clintons, right? They don't understand why black people are condemning themselves to, hopelessness and poverty by voting for Democrats all the time. And they do really care about this stuff. They care about, this bit of America that is rotting away. He did, as you say, less than nothing for race relations. I mean, race relations in America now are at their worst since, who knows, half a century, sure. Probably half a century. And, this hopey, changey first black president, wasn't he supposed to fix all this stuff? So I think maybe that his inaction on certain things is part of the problem for some voters and for some Republicans. Because, yeah, fine, he didn't do very much, but there were a few things that have happened in the last, 8, 9, 10 years. It would have been nice if he had done something. Fine. Maybe he didn't do anything on the economy. Good. We don't want Democrats tinkering too much with money. But it would have been nice if he'd done some stuff on race relations, arrested the rise of Black Lives Matter, for instance, if you don't agree with that particular organization. I can see why they, their eyes glaze over in, horror and whatever when you say that you don't mind him too much. For me, it's the snobbery. For me, it's the sort of clear, contemptuous sneering at ordinary, decent Americans that just makes me mad.
That's probably right. It tends to just go over my head. Speaking of Black Lives, I've been in, this radio show host asked me if I supported Black Lives Matter. And we just had this 1 hour discussion about hip hop. I had bought the most expensive piece of music ever.
This is the Wu-Tang album you bought, right?
Yeah. This is, by the way, in the history of in the history of global civilization, this is the most expensive piece of music ever purchased. And it's the fucking Wu-Tang. Not the Beatles.
It's so depressing.
The reason I did it was again, multifold. I mean, it was an opportunity to really shake things up. But, this guy...
So you have this and nobody else has it, right? And so nobody else in the world has heard it apart from them and you.
Yeah, and by the way, that's not an accolade for me. I mean, it's a rap album. It sounds like what you think it would sound like. It's not magic.
You know what I love so much is that, because, I can't tell the whole story because it might incriminate the person, but somebody kind of as a joke gave me money for sex recently, and it was a joke thing, and some people listening will know what this was, and it was a kind of a huge amount of like fuck you money, because it was the amount where you just don't care because it's so funny you can just do it, and I love you for this. I love the fact that you just really don't care what this album sounds like, and there are people who live and die by the Wu-Tang Clan who would probably start sawing bits of themselves off to own this album, and you don't give a shit what it sounds like. You just did it to be bad, and I love you for that so much.
Thanks. I mean, I did it for a lot of reasons. I mean, it was definitely, it made a lot of sense, but at the same time, one of the things that I was trying to accomplish was also I was trying to like explain to other mega millionaires and billionaires, and I was close to being a billionaire before my arrest, which is remarkable.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Then the government decided.
Isn't that the right response when somebody says something like that? Well done, you.
Yeah, shame on you.
No, bless your heart. Well done. That's what I thought anyway. That's why I came to America.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I was almost there, and then what I wanted to do is kind of explain to my rich friends, in essence, that I don't spend money on a lot of things, but I up and went and bought this album, and kind of what I was trying to get across is that, Americans, especially rich, not just Americans, but all rich people tend to spend money on ridiculous things.
Yeah.
And no one wanted to buy this album.
No, because it was on sale for a very long time, wasn't it?
Yeah, none of the other rich guys.
It wasn't like it was snapped up quickly.
No, yeah, not at all. And there was no bidding war. It was just sort of me and a handful of kind of very passive-aggressive folks. And it was remarkable to me because this had, I thought, some cultural significance. It did have some African-American significance. And in any event, I was interviewed on this very, very, very popular show in New York. It's a hip-hop station. And the guy asked me if I supported Black Lives Matter. And I totally froze. I had no idea what to say. And I basically turned it on him. And I said, look, I haven't done anything. But if you point me to something to support, I'll consider it and I'll look into it and I'll let you know. But I was put on the spot over it, and it was pretty uncomfortable. What's your whole take on it? Because I don't know much about it.
Well, it's clear to me that of the various self-described victim groups in America today, feminism and the women's movement in general is a preposterous joke. White middle-class women are, as I like to say in my talks, my college talks, probably the most privileged group in the history of human civilization. However, there is a case to answer, and some people get upset with me for this, but I think they're wrong. The black community in America is still owed something. The legacy of slavery is with them. And although Democrats and race baiters like Al Sharpton have encouraged black people into victimhood and grievance culture, which is what I think Black Lives Matter comes out of, where valid grievances turn into entitlement and tantrums, and I think that's what's happened with Black Lives Matter, versus a determination, for instance, to go out, make the best of the situation, become, entrepreneurs, become independent, buy into the American dream. My view on this is that Black Lives Matter encourages the worst response to what are genuine grievances in many cases, what are the real legacy of something bad that happened to these people. They are still owed something. But my view on Black Lives Matter is it encourages all of the worst responses to what are genuine grievances. And that, the only real result of Black Lives Matter, aside from a lot of journalists in the media patting themselves on the back and virtue signaling in a big ring, is black cities in flames. There's been no other real result of Black Lives Matter. All it encourages is tantrums and attention-seeking and self-destructiveness. And what I've learned, and I've some experience of visiting these places a little bit, and what I've read and the people I've talked to, my impression is that by far a better solution would be for black people to stop voting Democrats into local government and vote in Republicans who are going to encourage them to take charge of their own lives, dads to stay with their kids, these places to be policed properly. Giuliani saved so many lives when he started policing properly. Encourage people to take personal responsibility and stop blaming, the sort of evil white patriarchy for problems in your personal life which have nothing to do with history, that are just you being lazy. And start taking control and start rebuilding those cities that Black Lives Matter has left in flames. So, for me, it's just entirely the wrong direction to take for a community that does need some help and does need deserve something from the rest of us. The problem for them, of course, is that if Trump doesn't get in and we don't get a wall, it's going to be Hispanics who start taking over, demographically speaking. And they don't have the white guilt that everybody else has after slavery. So, you're going to see Hispanic mayors in these towns who are going to get in on the, progressive diversity, whatever ticket, Democrat mayors. And they're going to police pretty brutally when stuff starts going wrong and when there are riots. Because they don't have the same kind of, they don't have the same sort of, hands-off squeamishness about black issues, because they don't have that sort of middle-class white guilt thing. Anyway, that's my take on it. From what I've observed over the last couple of years, I just think it's the wrong direction.
Well, it's interesting. This radio show host, who's extremely popular, this fellow named Charlemagne, takes his name after
Charlemagne the God.
That's him.
Oh God, he's so cool. I love that guy.
Well, he started the interview. He's a rabble rouser, and I like him for that. But he started the interview with, tell us why you're not an entitled selfish prick or something. And I sort of demolished him over the course of an hour. It was the most viewed interview on a show that's been posted to YouTube in a very long time. It got more views than Bernie Sanders' interview on it and so forth.
I should have been more antanistic with you. I've completely screwed myself by being so by us getting on.
But my point is that I really tried to explain to this guy that, I'm from Brooklyn. I grew up in literally roaches and rats conditions. And, that my success is something to look up to, especially given that, there's 2 or 3 million Brooklynites, and many of them, people that don't know what to do. They've come to America and they're looking for a way to succeed. They can choose a route of complaining and voting Democrat, or they can be self-empowered and become tremendously successful with off the seat of their pants, as I did. And I think that the show has enabled me to sort of explain that. And then, he dropped the BLM stuff on me, and it was very sort of this very interesting microcosm. So I've been involved more and more in this sort of culture. Recently had this tiff with Kanye West as well, which was fun.
Oh yes, you did. Were you going to remind me about this? You were going to buy his album or something?
Yeah, I kind of made this unsolicited joke. A lot of what I do is satire. I mean, I'm trying to start a conversation. I said that I'd buy his album, weeks or hours really before it's to be released for $10 million. And of course,
he needs the money, doesn't he? I mean, why would he do it?
Who knows if he does or doesn't? But
he says he needs money.
Sure, and I wrote on this letterhead, this really tried to make it as in-depth as possible offer letter that looked as official as I could. But there's nothing official about it. It was just a joke, and everyone runs with it. It's my most viewed tweet ever. It's my most favorited tweet ever. And I didn't realize it would. I put a whole 5 minutes of work into it, and I didn't realize how gravitating it would be. And
this is the culture we're in now. There are so few people who are willing to provoke for provocation's sake, because they understand that humor and spectacle is as important as being a nice person as far as moving society ahead and getting people to discuss things. You just said starting conversations, and this
fearing the wrath of the media should be the last motivator for decisions.
Absolutely true. And this is one other reason you should be a Trump guy, because he has broken the stranglehold that the media thought they had over elections. He has proven that no longer can the American media make or break candidates, and no longer can the American media direct elections. And he's worth voting for just for that.
I think you've got me.
If you believe, as I do, that the media is part of the problem, if you believe that they deserve the most almighty bloody nose, there is no better presidential candidate in 100 years than Donald Trump.
I've looked CEO after CEO in the eye and said, your drug sells for $50 a pill, and that you'd have the same number of customers at $100 a pill.
Yeah.
And the CEO sits there and he says, you're right, Martin. And I say, okay, well, I own 10% of this company. And if you don't change the price to $100 a pill, I'm going to start a campaign to fire you.
Yeah.
And the CEO literally looks at me and says, I can't do it because I'm comfortable. My employees are comfortable. Everyone's happy. And if you put us through this, the media is going to go crazy and we can't do what's right for our shareholders, our owners, really you, because I'm not willing to take heat from the media. I just don't have the stomach to sit there and get ridiculed. And I'm sitting there saying, your job is to make as much money as possible for me. I own the company and that's that. And it just disgusts me that there's this fear of being ashamed. And if there's one thing I want to help people understand is that, the people that care about you, your friends, your loved ones, they're not going to change their opinion. And just as many people that are going to hate you because of the media, there's going to be as many or double or triple as many people that love you for sticking up for yourself and not apologizing for what you believe in, no matter if it's right or wrong. Conviction and faith and courage are their values that are not courage is a value that's no longer prized. And when you see someone truly courageous, like a Trump or myself or you, who's willing to stand up and call something faggot to her? What? That's absurd. It really takes someone courageous and not afraid of any consequence. And bravery is the first thing we're taught in childhood from fairy tales, that bravery is something to look up to. And in these cases, in my case, again, I think I'll be vindicating, and I think I'll beat the government in one of the most historic cases ever. Did you know that when I was arrested, it was the #1 story on Bloomberg for all of 2015? Of any story that they wrote, that was the #1 most viewed story. And so when I win in 2016 or 2017, and the government's handled one of the most embarrassing losses in a case.
I wonder how they'll cover it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, this is your monologue. Then I want to extract and I want to send it to every college student in the country. Because the stranglehold that the progressive left and the feminist crazies and all the rest of it have had for so long, the public shaming, the power they've had, what the media has been able to do for so long with this Damoclesian threat. Hanging as a sword, hanging over everyone's head. You say the wrong thing. You have the wrong opinion. You ally yourself with the wrong group. You do anything to step outside the progressive consensus. We will get you. Well, Trump has, in my view, been the most powerful, the ascendancy of Donald Trump, whatever happens next, has been the most obvious and the most powerful and the most historic event in a backlash that had already begun against the overweening oppressiveness of the media, and it's the way that it threatens to end people, and all of the assorted apparatus of the media, sort of these think tanks and the Twitter mobs and all the rest of it, the public shaming, the idea that you can be driven from public life for having the wrong opinions. I very firmly believe that 2016 is the year that this social justice craziness is going to start to come to an end, because this is the year the public is beginning to find out about it as we get into an election year, and as the college stuff kind of starts to come to light as well. All the craziness in college, the chalkenings, and the people getting punished literally just for having the wrong opinions on campus. This is the year I think the public has had enough, and that's why I hope that many of them will vote Trump, to send a signal that these unaccountable bullies in academia, the entertainment industry, the media, and all these other places that are enforcing a very narrow set of ideals are not to be feared, and nothing bad happens if you tell them to go fuck themselves.
Beautiful. Couldn't have said it better myself.
I think we should leave it there.
Yeah.
Thanks
for having me.
So much fun. It's been such an enjoyable conversation. You know, this is one of those, you know, sometimes when you listen to a radio show, you listen to a podcast and you're kind of like, damn, I'd love to have been in that room. You know, like, I'm sure people are going to have this. All the best shows have that. So look, thank you so much. And I would love to have you on again, perhaps when you get more news about your case, or, you know, the next time you do something completely incorrigible. I'll be sure to have you back so you can explain yourself. Look, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. We had a wonderful conversation, so I hope you've enjoyed it at home. I've been Milo Yiannopoulos, and thank you to my guest, Martin Shkreli. You've been listening to the Milo Yiannopoulos Show, the podcast that launched 1,000 therapy sessions for triggered snowflakes. Thanks for tuning in, and please do subscribe on iTunes, leave us a comment, a rating, whatever you like. Our producer is Alan Bakari. Our researchers are Will Ross and Michael Poole. Our resident German, Mark Geppert, ensures the trains run on time. And our sound engineer, John Fitch, can be found at sturbridgesound.com. Download new episodes of the Milo Yiannopoulos Show at podcast1.com, and you can also listen to us at Breitbart.
Stay tuned for 60-second AP News headlines. Tuesday, April 19th on the CW. It's coming, and there's no cure.
This is now a matter of national security.
The greatest enemy comes from within. From the co-creator of The Vampire Diaries, Julie Plec, and the Emmy Award-winning director of Game of Thrones, comes the riveting outbreak thriller, Containment.
What is it?
Well, that's part of the problem, Major. It's not currently presenting as anything we can identify.
When a mysterious and deadly epidemic breaks out in Atlanta, a massive urban quarantine is quickly enforced. Loved ones will be torn apart, and those on both sides of the fence will be put to the ultimate test of survival. Not just fighting disease, but fear, isolation, and the unknown.
Tell us you can't touch him, he's infectious.
But is this virus an act of Mother Nature, terrorism, or something far more sinister? The truth will not be contained.
I'm afraid I must declare the virus highly contagious and fatal in 100% of its victims.
Secrets begin to unravel. Society begins to crumble. But unlikely heroes will rise. Ordinary people will defy the most extraordinary odds. Don't miss the most utterly terrifying, yet highly anticipated new series, Containment. The must-see limited series event premieres Tuesday, April 19th. Catch it, but be warned, there is no cure. Only on the CW.